Welcome back to the Explainer. All right, today we're jumping right into a classic data science showdown. When it comes to building a decision tree, should you be using CHART or CHAID?
Okay, so picture this. You've got your data, you need a classification model. Decision trees seem like the perfect tool. But then you hit this fork in the road. CHART or CHAID? They seem similar, but trust me, how they get the job done is worlds apart. So let's break it down and figure out which one you should actually be using.
So first things first, let's get on the same page. Both of these, CHART and CHAID, are what we call classification trees. Just think of them as a really smart flowchart. They start with a big, messy pile of data and start splitting it into smaller and smaller groups until each group is, well, pretty much the same. The whole point is to predict a category, right? Like, is this customer going to churn? Or what kind of buyer is this person? That's the game we're playing.
Okay, so the first huge difference between them is just how they build a tree in the first place. And the best way I've heard this described is to think of them as two totally different kinds of builders. One's a sculptor and the other's a gardener.
CHART is the sculptor. It goes big first. It grows this massive, super detailed tree. Think of it like starting with a giant block of marble. Then it steps back and starts carefully chiseling away, cutting off any branches that aren't actually helping predict things. We call that post-pruning. Now CHAID? Totally different vibe. It's the cautious gardener. It won't even let a branch start to grow unless it's sure it's going to be fruitful. It checks first, and that's called pre-pruning.
So let's dig into that sculpting process for a second. CHART just goes for it. It grows the biggest tree possible, one that fits the initial data almost too perfectly. It's basically memorized everything, including all the random noise. That's what we call overfitting. Then it takes a fresh set of data and starts testing the tree, working its way back and snipping off all the branches that don't work on the new stuff. It's all about finding that perfect balance, a tree that's powerful but not just a one-trick pony.
CHAID, with its gardener mindset, is way more careful. Before it even thinks about making a split, it stops and runs a statistical test, like a chi-squared test. It's asking, hey, is this split actually meaningful? If the answer is no, it just stops. That branch is done. It never gets built. It's a really smart way to avoid that whole overfitting problem from the very beginning.
Okay, so their whole growth strategy is different. But what about the splits themselves, the actual forks in the road? Well, this is another huge point of difference. You can think of it like a country road versus a superhighway.
And you can see it right here. The CHART tree on the left, it's all about simple two-way splits, a question with only a yes or no answer. Is your income over 50K? Boom, two paths. But look at CHAID on the right. It's way more flexible. It can take a single variable, say region, and split it into multiple branches all at once, north, south, east, west. It's a roundabout, not just a fork.
And this isn't just a technical detail. It makes a huge difference in how easy the tree is to understand. CHAID's trees, because of these multi-way splits, tend to be wider and shorter. And you know what that means? They're often way easier to read and explain to someone who isn't a data scientist. That's a massive win if you ever have to present your findings to, say, a marketing team.
So we've got different ways of growing and different ways of splitting. And all of this is leading up to the most important point. These aren't just random design choices. They reveal two completely different philosophies about what a model is even supposed to do.
And this quote from Professor Galichmuly just nails it. The whole debate isn't about which one is better. It's about what you're trying to achieve. Are you analyzing or are you predicting?
So this is the question you have to ask yourself. What is my number one goal here? If you need the most accurate prediction possible, and you don't really care how it gets there, if a black box is okay, then CHART is your go-to. It is a prediction powerhouse. But if your goal is to understand why things are happening, to find interesting groups in your data, and to actually explain your findings, well, that's exactly what CHAID was built for.
And because of this core difference, you see them used in totally different places. Marketers love CHAID for things like customer segmentation or digging into survey results, anytime the why is just as critical as the what. Meanwhile, CHART is the undisputed king in places like credit risk and fraud detection, where all that matters is getting the prediction right.
All right, so with all of that under our belts, how do you actually pick one for your project? Let's get practical and put it all together.
Think of this table as your handy cheat sheet. Now, we've already talked about the big ones, the goal, the splitting, the pruning. But there are a couple of other nerdy but important differences here.
CART, for example, can sometimes unfairly favor variables that just have a ton of possible split points. CHAID doesn't really have that problem. And look at how they handle missing data. CART gets really clever with surrogate splits, using other variables to guess the value. CHAID just says, I'll put all the missing ones in their own little group.
And listen, this isn't just some academic debate. Picking the wrong tool has real consequences. Try explaining a super complex CART tree to your marketing VP. Good luck with that. On the flip side, if you use a CHAID model for, say, high-stakes fraud detection, you might be giving up precious points of accuracy. It's all about matching the tool to the job, so your model actually does what your business needs it to do.
So really, it all boils down to this one big question. What do you value more for this project? A perfect prediction that you can't really explain, or a crystal clear explanation that might be just a tiny bit less precise? As we dive deeper into a world of complex black box AI, this choice between CART and CHAID is a great reminder of that classic trade-off: pure predictive power versus something a human can actually understand. There's no single right answer, but knowing what you're aiming for, that's everything.